Hey gamers, Munklick here. I saw something on the Guild Wars 2 forums that I thought was worth a broadcast because it explains what happened earlier this week. So for any of you that have had time to play Guild Wars 2 this week, from Tuesday onward, you might know that on Tuesday, a lot of stuff broke. So I myself was tweeting out stuff that I recognized was broken to let people know. You couldn't do the gold to gems exchange or vice versa. Crafting stations were showing up entirely blank if you clicked the wrong button. Guild missions were completely gone for a while. World Boss Teleport was gone. Map bonuses were no longer on the maps. I don't know if that was just a visual bug or if they were completely gone. You couldn't buy or sell on the trading posts. The leave instance button was missing from a strike. The karmic converter was broken. I don't have a karmic converter, so that's why I use that picture. The Tarir meta wouldn't start. The buff pillars and whispers of Jormag wouldn't start. Public Dragonstorm wasn't starting. At that point, we realized that all metas were broken. It was crazy. They got most of that fixed within like 48 hours, but they released a post on their forums talking about what happened. Now, my previous job before, being able to become an international internet superstar celebrity sensation was tech support. And I had a boss that would often try to hide things from customers that were broken. So I really appreciate honesty. Like, we're all human. The people that work on the game is human. Obviously, that would not excuse, like, if stuff was breaking all the time, like, there is a limit to everybody's patience. However, if something happens, especially with an always live service game, I do appreciate them explaining, like, hey, here's what happened, just FYI. So with that said, let's read it. So this is from Ruby. It says, "Hi all, I want to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the unusual number of issues after yesterday's game update." This was written on Wednesday, and it's referring to Tuesday. "I talked with one of our senior software engineers to help me outline what happened, so here you go. In Monday's studio update, we talked about taking on projects that will keep this game healthy in the long run, like refactoring large swaths of old code. Development on a game that has been live for a decade can be a minefield. Fixes like that risk breaking content that was inadvertently depending on a bug in order to work. That's what happened here when we fixed one of those old pieces of code. We did catch the problem and fix it, but Murphy's Law was now paying attention. You see, shipping a huge live game like Guild Wars 2 requires a complex system for managing the flow of code and content going out the door. Behind the scenes, there are multiple copies of a lot of stuff we work with. Copies that are getting tinkered with, copies that are getting tested, and copies that are right on the precipice of being released. Which means that even when a fix is done and dusted, it still needs to move forward on various conveyor belts, so to speak, so to make sure it gets to you. In this case, the fix missed one of those conveyor belts along the way." And this is very similar to my own work in this industry. We would, if the customers were on version 1.0 of something, we might have version 1.1 about to go live and already have, engineers working on 1.2 and then a list of stuff that needs to be tackled in 1.3 on the board. Like, it would go through a belt, and, the stuff on 1.3 would go to the devs, and then they would, go through the programmers, it would go through the QA team. Then it would go to the boss, who would completely ignore what the QA team said, and then it would go live, and then the stuff the QA team said would happen. But you get the right idea. So this is all standard so far. What did this mean for you? In this case, the piece of code that broke was related to content that depends on real time, what we call time spans. When it went live, it quickly affected a lot of content that appeared to be unrelated at first glance. Metas, world bosses, guild missions, raid buffs, karmic converters, and portal devices, and more. But they all relied on that bit of code in one way or another. And of that huge list of stuff I showed you, I think most of it, not the crafting station and not the gems, the gold to gems, gems to gold thing, but most of the rest of that was all falls under the umbrella that she just described. So why didn't we just ship that missing fix right away? It was right there. Well, tracking down the problem and getting a fix together was a bit of a scavenger hunt. When you all flag an issue in the live game, the first thing we do is find or recreate the problem based on the information we have so we can look it over firsthand. And yeah, that's standard. If someone says, my stuff's broke, and then, tech would be like, well, what were you doing? Well, I was hopping on one leg. So then the tech guy hops on one leg, and he's like, well, that didn't break for me. What were you doing specifically? Oh, well, I was hopping on one leg in Verdant Brink. And he does it, and he's like, anything else? They're like, while singing happy birthday. Oh, there we go. Okay. So then you've got hopping on one leg of vertebrae while singing happy birthday causes the problem. So, first they have to see if you're a liar, because a lot of people are. And then they go from there and see if they can recreate the issue and then figure out what causes it. Yesterday's issues began when a player reported that Verdant Brink... Okay, I was joking about the Verdant Brink thing. Night Boss meta was not triggering, so we started looking to see what was wrong with Verdant Brink. 2 more reports about metas elsewhere rolled in shortly afterwards, so we switched our search to try to find out what was wrong with meta events. Meanwhile, other players started reporting certain gizmos were broken, so we began looking into this apparently unrelated issue as well. Then we learned that Pack Supply network agents had vanished. At this point, it was probably like the building was on fire and everyone's just running around screaming. At this point, we started looking for a connection because it was clear that something bigger was going on here. We knew there was probably a connection, but there were a number of possibilities that we were investigating, including time spanning. Having a list of possible connections allowed us to start tagging in people from specific teams to help, including a software engineer who was able to trace the various issues back to that piece of code, confirm the connection, find the lost fix, stick it back on the conveyor belt, and hand it off to our release management team to get a hotfix ready. So how did we not catch such major issues before we shipped the update? I mean, I can already guess that the QA team doesn't have time to test every single thing in the game. That's it. I know they have a QA team. The game is 10 years old. There's a million things in there. When they get a new build for the game, they cannot test everything in the game. I think that's the TLDR of what we're about to read. When there's a bug and something breaks, it doesn't proactively send up a help on broken flare. We find it when we test that specific content or item. We, of course, can't test the entire game before every update since there are millions of things to test. Every item, skill, enemy, event, NPC, and so on. So we have to use our time wisely while casting the widest possible net for issues. Our QA teams test a broad range of categories, including the new things in the world, things that have broken in the past, things related to recent major changes to fundamental systems to make sure they're still working properly. In this case, none of the affected systems had broken in this way before, nor were they in any of the 2 check categories. That said, when we ship major bugs like this, it's an opportunity to look at our processes for holes and find ways to improve. This is obviously a simplified explanation, but I hope this peek at the workflow and the sometimes very surprising vagaries of game development provides some insight. In the meantime, our teams are continuing to work on issues as they arise, so thank you again for letting us know when something isn't working properly. And that's the end of that. And as always, I'll have a link to this post down below. So yeah, as someone just who's been on both sides of this, like I just wanted to share this and, just... If any of you care what I think, just, stay calm. That's basically the gist of it here. This game does not break often. This is the second, oh God, sorry, here's what happened letter I've seen since I became a content creator for this game, which was 4.5 years ago at this point. And it is always live. And they don't run a PTR. Maybe they should, but they don't run a PTR, a public test realm. World of Warcraft runs a public test realm, but they just might not have the manpower for it. So yeah, it does suck. Speaking as a gamer right now, it sucks. But on the same note, this stuff doesn't happen that often. So you kind of give them a little bit of slack if you're one of the people that's really super upset about that. I do appreciate that they are releasing, these type of things, like the post-mortem type of thing. I really, really appreciate that, both as a gamer and as someone who was in tech support, underneath someone who tried to hide problems like this. But I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, that's what happened. That covers most of what broke that day. And yeah, I thought it was worth repeating. That's it.